Hey, good morning. What I want to do today is introduce the idea of operations management. It's going to lay the theoretical foundation for all the real world stuff we're going to do the rest of the semester. But there's some important stuff here that lays the foundation because everything we're going to do the rest of the semester is going to build upon this, this lecture. First thing I like to do with operations management is talk about how operations and supply chain is related to every other discipline. Now, if we were in a classroom face to face, I'd have you raise your hand and tell me whether you're a marketing major, finance major, accounting major, international business, information systems, business admin, leadership, whatever it is that you're studying. And hopefully, if I said supply chain, a bunch of y'all would raise your hands as supply chain majors. That's my hope. One of my goals is to try to get some of y'all convinced to pick up a supply chain concentration, supply chain minor, or even become a supply chain major because you find the material interesting. But I don't think we do a real good job, not just here at KU, but in every school of business that I've talked to. I don't think we do a real good job of linking all these different business disciplines together. So I created what I call my supply chain star. Now, when I first came out with this, some of the folks in the School of Business got a little concerned. One actually came to me and said, look, you're saying that the supply chain's the center of the universe, and we're just all kind of on the periphery. I'm not really saying that, although from my background, the supply chain is the center of my universe because that's what I've done most of my life. But you can take any one of these different disciplines on the periphery and put it in the middle, and put supply chain on the periphery, and make the same case. All I'm trying to do with this slide that I call my supply chain star is show how they're all interrelated. So if you have the slide deck pulled up, look over to the far left-hand corner there. I've got finance. I can't do supply chain and operations without my financial folks providing me some cash and some budgeting. Tell me what I can and can't spend. I can't do supply chain without accounting. We'll see, we talk about inventory management in the last fourth of the course. We'll see that inventory, that's all it really is accounting. What do I have? How much do I have? Where do I have it? How much value do I have tied up in it? I can't do supply chain without marketing. In fact, probably supply chain and marketing are the most closely related. If you look at some of the major leading schools for supply chain management degrees, you'll see their program started as part of the marketing department. In some cases, still is. Because I can have the greatest products in the world in my supply chain, but if you don't market them for me, they won't sell. Conversely, you can be the best marketing person in the world, come up with the greatest marketing campaign ever devised, but if I don't have the products in the supply chain, it ain't going to work because you can't sell anything. I cannot do supply chain management operations without information systems because everything's automated these days. So I have to understand the link between information systems and operations. I can't do supply chain without international business because as we've seen through the pandemic panic buying and the shortages, we're very dependent upon international suppliers to provide products to us. And when the supply chain gets interrupted for whatever reason, we'll talk about that later in the course, I've got to figure out how to get around that with other suppliers. We can't do supply chain without business analytics. If you're an analytics major, look at what we do in supply chain. Because without analytics, I don't know if my supply chain is working well. I can't benchmark it without some analytics. And I can't do supply chain or operations management without basic understandings of business administration and business management. So none of the disciplines within the business school stand alone. They're all interrelated. One of my goals over the next 4 weeks is to show that interrelationship between all these other disciplines in supply chain and operations. So we have to figure out, as part of operations management, Why do companies exist? Why do they exist? Why do you have a company? Think about that for a second. Almost every textbook on operations, on business, on supply chain tell us that companies exist to provide goods and services that individuals can't provide for themselves. Well, that sounds so humanitarian. I'm going to go into business to provide stuff for you. That sounds great. I don't think it's true, but it sounds very nice. I think the real reasons that companies go into business is to provide goods and services that you can't do, but to do it at a profit. Nobody that I ever have met goes into business with the idea, you know what, I got so much money, I'm going to go into business to lose some money. Now, for a little while, I thought maybe David Glass bought the Royals for that reason, because he made so much money as the CEO of Walmart. He needed some way to shelter some money, so he bought the Royals to lose money. And he did a real good job of that. Then he finally realized that more fans would come to the game and more value would be created if he put a quality team on the field. And 94, 95 proves that. Or excuse me, 2014, 2015 proves that. When they won American League and then won the World Series in 2015. And then he sold everybody off. And we're back to being, that's why I laugh when I look at the reports. Well, the Royals are trying to figure out how to get to 50 to 100% attendance levels with the coronavirus going on. They need to figure out how to get to 50% attendance levels without the coronavirus first, because they haven't got there yet. Most of the games I went to last year, maybe 30% full. But nobody really, I don't think, goes in business with the idea of losing money. We're there to make a profit. But I also think that in some business models, whether it's intentional or not, the business model is built around the idea of putting the competition out of business. I don't think Sam Walton went into business and created Walmart as a small discount department store with the idea, I'm going to build this thing so big, I'm going to put all the competition out of business. But it's kind of done that. I don't think when Marcus and Blanks created Home Depot, their idea was we're going to put all the other mom and pop hardware stores out of business. But they're doing that. But they're doing it to make a profit. One of the things we need to do is just kind of define operations as a system. And we're going to come up with a very bare bones definition of operations management. And we're going to do that, but we're going to build some muscle on it throughout the next 4 weeks. First thing we have to do is, Dr. Deming said, if you can't define what you're doing as a system, you don't know what you're doing. Well, my experience from business is there's a lot of folks don't know what they're doing because they can't define what they're doing as a system. I call it the elevator speech. If we were in Cap Fed, could you tell me between the first and the fourth floor? And I realize it's a very slow elevator, so you got lots of time. Can you tell me between the first and the fourth floor what you're studying, what the foundations, what you're studying is? If you can't, you need to go back and look at what you're studying. So before we define operations as a system, I want to define what a system is. A system is a group of interrelated activities or events. That's it. It could be, in the case of academia, going to class, or in the case of the summer, watching the videos, doing the reading, doing the assignments, doing well in the exams, and passing the class. That's a system. From a sports perspective, you have to practice. You analyze the practice. You watch the game films of your games as well as the competition's games. You adjust the game plan. You win games. That's it. It's that simple. It's a system. So I want to define operations management as a system. It's a system of inputs, transformation, outputs with feedback. 4 things. Inputs, transformation, outputs, feedback. The inputs can be material, machines, labor, money, management. The transformation can be almost anything. I can take raw materials, transform them into finished good. Transformation process can be moving from my distribution center to your front door. Retail operations, the transformation is you come to my store, you give me money, I give you a product, transformation. Lots of different transformations out there. And I've had the outputs, goods or services. Sometimes I get other things, that's goods or services. I get pollution, waste. I get technology breakthroughs or product breakthroughs I wasn't expecting. And I have feedback. I have feedback from the outputs to the transformation to make sure I'm getting the right quality and quantity from the transformation process. I have feedback from the transformation back to the inputs to make sure I'm getting the right quality and the right inputs to meet the needs of the transformation process. And I have feedback from outputs to inputs to make sure I close the loop. Was there something here create an issue over here? So it's 4 simple things: inputs, transformation, outputs, feedback. That's it. Really bare bones. It's like, I know I used to teach over in Budig in the back room, in the prep room over at Budig. They had a skeleton hanging there for the anatomy and physiology classes. This is kind of a skeleton. It's just bones. We're going to build some meat and muscles and skin around these bones over the next 4 weeks. But this gives me a bare bones start. I can define operations as a system. The primary objective of this system is to provide value. That's my number one goal of operations management, to provide value. I want to provide value to the customer experience, to the quality of the product, and the bottom line profits. And if it's not adding value to the customer experience, the quality of the product, or bottom line profits, I've got to ask, why are we doing it? If it doesn't add value, it's waste. Every activity, every process in business adds cost. Not every process adds value. If it doesn't add value, I want to get rid of it. We're going to look at some impacts to operations management. So I want to take about the next, 5-10 minutes, kind of give you a historical background of operations management to get you from where we started to where we are today. So you kind of understand that historical foundation that has kind of shaped the thought and activities today. So the first thing I want to look at is the Industrial Revolution. It goes back like 1769. Now we all studied the Industrial Revolution probably in grade school, middle school, high school. Maybe had it in a history class here at the university. And I realized current events show maybe we aren't studying history like we used to anymore. But we all learned the Industrial Revolution took us from an agrarian society to an industrial society and allowed us to start producing goods and services that individuals couldn't do by themselves. I want to look at a couple of things. And as you go through the slide deck I've got provided, you'll notice that every so often I put things in red. Now, when I talk to the Army, we do things like saying this is important. Well, I don't want to stand here and beat on my table or beat on the podium when I'm in a classroom. So I try to put things in red that I think are critical, that are important, to focus your attention on those things that are critical. So the first thing I want to focus on from the Industrial Revolution is Eli Whitney. Now, Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. And growing up in the South, I got to tell you, we have a different view of history in the South than we do anywhere else in the world. We glorify things that should not be glorified. We honor things that maybe shouldn't be honored. And that's part of the problem we have today in society. But one of the things they taught me in grade school, middle school, high school history courses was that Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. Now, the cotton gin, what it did was, why it's such a great invention in the South, was it allowed cotton plantation farmers to grow more cotton. Because this cotton gin, you can put the cotton in there and turn the crank, and it'd separate the cotton ball from the cotton seed, which prior to this you had to do by hand, which is tedious and time consuming. What it did was allow my ancestors to pick more cotton, allow the rich folks to get richer. What I think is more important, though, about Eli Whitney is he invented interchangeable parts. He had a contract with the new U.S. Army to build weapons for the Army. Just like some contractors today, business, government contractors, they're behind schedule. So he went in to see the president. He got called in to see the president. Thou shalt come here and see me. He walked into the president's office with a musket. Try that today. Try walking into the White House with a weapon. See how far you get. Obviously, times have changed. Some for the better, some not for the better. Okay? But he walked into the president, laid his weapon on the desk and said, what I'm trying to do is, the reason I'm behind schedule, I'm trying to design this so I can swap things out. If the trigger breaks, I can swap out the trigger assembly. If the hammer breaks, I can swap out the hammer. If the pan, the flintlock hit zone breaks, I can swap out that without trashing the entire weapon. Prior to this concept, if you broke the trigger or broke the hammer or broke where the flintlock hit the steel and created the spark, or you blew up the barrel, you just ruined the weapon. You couldn't fix it. If you think about it in modern day analogy, you're driving down the road, you get a flat tire on your car, pull to the side of the road, park it, call somebody to come pick you up, and you go buy a new car because you can't swap parts out. You blow an engine, you got to get a new car because you can't swap the engine out. So all the repair part systems we have today, all the interchangeable parts, swapping out printer cartridges in your printer, all those interchangeable parts go back to Eli Whitney and his design of weapons with interchangeable parts. I think it's a great accomplishment. We're going to see the Gantt chart pop up. We'll talk about project management here in a few days. Been around for over 100 years. Still in use because it works. Most textbooks tell us Henry Ford created the moving assembly line. And he did. Great accomplishment, don't get me wrong. But what I think he doesn't get credit for that has just as much importance, if not more, some other things. He thought about location analysis, where to put the plant. Remember, back in those days, there weren't any superhighways. There weren't any airports. Put the plant close to the airport or superhighway like we do today. They weren't there. The modes of transportation he had to deal with was water and rail. So he had to put his Rouge River plant close to the water, close to the rail, have stuff delivered. He thought about the environment. He put plants on the roof of his assembly plant to keep the building cooler from an employee perspective. He did operations research, systems analysis. He discovered that black paint cured faster than any other color of paint. So Henry Ford was very famous for saying, you can have a vehicle in any color you want, as long as that color is black. Not that he just loved black vehicles, but the paint cured faster. Only making one color vehicle, he could crank out vehicles faster. Crank out more vehicles, make more money. And I think he's the father of reduce, reuse, recycle. He was way ahead of his time. Long before this idea of designing for the environment, sustainability came about. We'll talk about both of those later in the course. But long before this came about, he was requiring his suppliers to ship products to his plant in wooden crates. These crates had certain dimensions. The wood had to be certain thickness, certain length, certain height. And oh, by the way, in this wooden crate, there were certain areas, certain specific areas, you had to drill holes. Wow. A couple of suppliers said, hey, look, it's not going to make a difference. We're going to do business with you, but just out of curiosity, why are we drilling holes in these wooden crates? Turns out the wooden crates became the floorboards of the cars. And where the holes were drilled in the wood, it's where the wooden crate was attached to the frame. Genius. Because you look at today, the majority, according to studies coming out the last couple of months, the majority of the boxes, once he says as much as 80% of stuff being shipped by Amazon is not getting recycled. So he was way ahead of his time in 1913 with these wooden crates and reusing the crates. And oh, by the way, when they got to the point they had more stuff coming in than they had need for floorboards, that's where his cousin came up with the idea for Kingsford charcoal. Not a bad output from that transformation. Wasn't what they're looking for, but not a bad output. 1930s, Elton Mayo did some studies at the Hawthorne Electric Plant. Now, the idea was they went in and they changed the brightness of the lights. The theory was the brighter the lights, the more productive the workers would be. And it worked. The more the lights they put in, the brighter it got, the more productive they became. Then somebody's like, well, let's prove this to be true. Let's take some lights out. It took lights out, got more productive. When the study was finished, they were back to the original lighting level, and every time they changed the lighting level, the workers got more productive. Finally, they said, we got to talk to the workers. What a novel idea. Let's talk to the workers, see what's going on. What they discovered was it had nothing to do with the brightness of the lights. The workers knew somebody was watching them, so they got more productive. It's kind of like the old adage, we only do well with the boss's checking. They knew somebody was checking. They were afraid if they slacked off, they'd lose their jobs. They worked harder. We're going to see the project evaluation review technique and the critical path method technique for project management control. We'll know about project management in a few days. They've been around since the mid-50s. Over 60 years, they're still being used today. Still in use. Why? Because they work. I am a strong believer, if it works, don't mess with it. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to process design in a couple of weeks. 1970s, just-in-time came along. Now in the 50s and 60s, if you got something and it said on the back, made in Japan, it was a joke. You got a toy at Christmas, said made in Japan, you were lucky if it still worked by New Year's Day, a week later. And all of a sudden in the 70s, almost overnight, the words made in Japan became synonymous with quality because of Toyota, Nissan, Honda, tied back to the Toyota production system and a guy named Taiichi Ohno who wrote about this system, and we started calling it just-in-time. And we're going to look at just-in-time in great detail in the last week of the course. But it all ties back to Taiichi Ohno. In fact, you take it a little farther back, it really ties back to Dr. Deming, because Dr. Deming went to Japan after World War II and helped them rebuild their economy. And what they learned from him, they wrote about the Toyota production system, and we call it just-in-time. 1980s came along, we got electronic data interchange, electronic funds transfer. Big words for simple concepts. Electronic data interchange is simply passing information electronically. It was a big deal back in the 80s when it came along. Today we take it for granted. You send an email, you send a text, you buy something from Amazon, it's EDI. You put what you want in the cart, you click on what you want, how many you want, you put in the cart, you put your billing information, your shipping information, click it, puts in electronic data interchange in a format that Amazon's computers read. It's a big deal back then. We didn't have the internet back then. Al Gore had not invented it yet. We didn't have email because we didn't have an internet. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, this thing called electronic funds transfer came along. Again, we take it for granted today. You use your Beacon Bucks, use your debit card, use your credit card, transfers funds from your account to their account, or from their account to your account. You get a direct deposit, electronic funds transfer. Back then it was a big deal. There were only 2 credit cards. Well, there's 3. I guess 4 really. There was Diners Club, which is kind of gone now. There was American Express, very exclusive back then. There was MasterCard. And there was Bank of America card, now Visa. That was it. I mean, you had all the little department stores had their own credit cards, but for the most part, you used the credit card, but you had to get a physical bill. You had to pay it. Very few ATMs back then. I mean, I thought it was a great thing when I got to Hawaii and I could use an ATM card to put money in or take money out of my account or change it from savings to checking. Mid 80s came along and it became a popular thing. The Army went to, everybody had to have direct deposit, electronic funds transfer. Prior to that, your options were you could end of month paycheck, mid-month paycheck. You could get, they started direct deposit by the time I came in the Army, so you could do that, but very few people were doing it. And then you had the old-fashioned way of you went to the pay line every month and you got paid in cash, which is not a good thing because some people aren't good when they get wallets full of cash. And it also created some issues when people get mugged. So they went to mandatory electronic funds transfer direct deposit. I had 450 people in my company. I had to go to each one of them individually that didn't already have direct deposit, explain to them the benefit of having direct deposit. And the biggest benefit was they got their money a day earlier. You had to worry about lost checks or delays in the mail. He was guaranteed it was going to be there. But it's a big deal back then. They would take it for granted. 90s came along. Internet was invented. Everybody had access to the internet. Everybody got email. 92, I got my very first email account of my own. We had one in the late 80s, but it was an office account. Everybody had access to it. So it was kind of a great experience when everybody got their own email accounts. They would take it for granted. We've all got 2, 3, 4, 5 email accounts. We have all kinds of ways of doing electronic commerce. That came along about the mid-90s. Then 2000s created a whole huge burst of electronic commerce after the first dot-com bust in the late 90s. We got this big, huge surge of electronic commerce, which surged even more as a result of people being afraid to leave their house. They started doing more and more e-commerce purchases during the pandemic and the shelter at home. And then we saw this idea of the Internet of Things, all the different things that connect to the Internet. We'll talk about that a little more later in the course. And we saw, obviously, this huge impact from a supply chain operations perspective of the pandemic panic buying of products, creating emptiness on the shelves. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to forecasting and inventory. There was a guy named Clausewitz, a Prussian, 1800s, who wrote about military theory from his perspective, looking at the Napoleonic Wars. He wrote a book called On War. It's got a lot of applications in the military, and it's required reading in most military courses from mid-career till the end of your careers. One of the things he said, though, that I think is applicable to our course is all things change when you go from the abstract to the concrete. The abstract is academic theory. The concrete is the real world. My goal is to bridge those two for you. So you think about e-commerce, and some of these are, I think, are from a Clausewitzian perspective, maybe abstract. Several textbooks say that it creates better customer relations. I don't think so. In fact, I think customer service is a dying art. Everybody you call apparently has recently changed their menu, because the first thing here is, para español, press ocho. If you don't press ocho, okay, then you get it in English. And the next thing you hear after that is, please listen carefully as our menu options have recently changed. I think everybody in the world has recently changed their menu options. And you got to go through about 8 different screens of pushing buttons till you finally talk to somebody to solve your problem. I do get more efficient processes, because a lot of things we did, and we discovered this in the Army, a lot of things we were only doing because it was a manual process. Now that it's all automated, I don't need all those different processes. I get lower cost of materials because I can shop from anywhere. I'm not stuck with, when I was in college, my options for clothing was I went to Sears, Penny's, Ivy's, now Dillard's, There was Kmart. There was no Walmart then. It's a company called Sears. And if they didn't have it, my option was Montgomery Ward's catalog or Penny's catalog or the Sears catalog. I didn't have all the options I have today. If I can't find what I'm looking for in the store, I can find it online. Or I can go online and find exactly what I'm looking for and have it delivered depending on who I buy it from, how long it takes to deliver. I don't have a lot of faith in Amazon because I've had a lot of stuff from Amazon lately that I've ordered that they said it shipped. Oh, we lost it. You have to apply for a refund. Or I order stuff from Amazon with Amazon Prime. It takes 3 weeks to get to me. The only benefit Amazon provides is it's a little cheaper and you get it to you in a couple of days. Can't get to me in a couple of days, maybe I don't need it that bad. Or I can get it somewhere else. It does create new forms of organization having e-commerce and the internet. Because I can have a virtual company. I can set up a company out of my office, right here, in my office. I can set up a company that doesn't own anything but the office and the computer. You go to my website, you buy the product. I send electronic data interchange to my supplier in China. They ship the product to my customer in Germany. I don't own anything. They get money, I get money. In fact, Amazon started as a virtual company. They were owned nothing but the website. You go to the website, you place an order. They ship the EDI to a book supply company. They ship you the book. You got a good price. Book supply company got a profit. Amazon got a profit. And then about 1999, Amazon said, you know what? We can make more money if we get into owning stuff. And back then they thought they could get by with 6 distribution centers in the United States, 1 in Europe, 1 in Asia, and take care of all the customers. Well, obviously they've expanded from that. So they're no longer a virtual company. eBay's still a virtual company. eBay owns the servers and the website. They don't own any products. Uber's a virtual company. Uber doesn't own any cabs. Airbnb is a virtual company. It doesn't own any rooms, but it's the largest hotel in the world now. I get expanded supply chains because I can buy from anywhere, shop anywhere, sell anywhere. And I do think you get higher customer expectations. Because if I order something from you and you tell me I've got it, it's in stock, I'm shipping it, you'll have it within 2 days, I expect it on my front porch in 2 days. Not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. I don't expect the message saying, well, because of the pandemic, we're prioritizing our shipments and you may not get this anytime soon. Well, then cancel it. I'll buy it downtown because they're open. I need it now. That's why I'm ordering it now. You get globalization, 2004, and get updated in 2007, I think it was. Friedman wrote a book called The World is Flat. And one of the things he said that flattened the world is the internet and globalization. I can take x-rays in Lawrence, Kansas this afternoon, ship them EDI, ship them to somebody in India. Somebody in Mumbai can look at the x-rays, analyze the x-rays, ship the information back, and tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll have the information from 5 o'clock, yesterday's 5 o'clock x-rays. It can tell you what the prognosis is. And I get more competition because anybody who wants to spend money on a website and pay a little extra, be bumped up in the Google search engine process, is a competitor now. So let's define being competitive. Competitiveness is the measure to which I can compete with other companies to provide goods and services that meets the needs of society, that improves the livelihood and the welfare of my workers and my shareholders and my customers. If you think about being competitive, there's several measures of being competitive. Productivity is one of them. We're going to look at productivity in a little greater detail in a few minutes, but productivity simply measures the output from that transformation input. Gross domestic product. How well am I doing as a country compared to other countries with growth or lack thereof in my GDP? Kind of give you an example of Walmart. The sales of Walmart, Black Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those 3 days after Thanksgiving, not even counting whatever they sell on Thanksgiving Day or what they sell on Cyber Monday, just those 3 days, Black Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the sales of Walmart exceeds the GDP of South Africa for the entire year. Walmart makes about $57 million an hour, every hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days, this year, 366 days a year. Market cap, maybe a way of measuring competitiveness between different companies. A couple of textbooks talk about the quality of education as being a measure of being competitive between states. I'm not sure about that. So I'm not sure how we measure education anymore, how we benchmark it, because I'm not sure we have standards across the country for the same topics. And several textbooks that I looked at talked about efficiency of government being a measure of competitiveness. I gotta tell you, during my consulting, during my military careers, I've been in about 35, 40 different countries. During my military career, I got the chance to go into our White House several times. I've testified in front of Congress about supply chain and budgeting issues. So I've been in our Capitol several times. I've been in our Pentagon way too many times. I've been in the equivalent of our White House, Capitol, and Pentagon in other countries. And I got to tell you, from my experience, at least from my point of view, where I stand, the words efficiency and government should never be used in the same sentence. If that's a measure of being competitive, ain't nobody competitive. So productivity is simply, we said we're going to talk about that a little more. It's simply the output from that transformation process divided by the input from that transformation process. That's all it is. We have time, we're going to look at productivity a little more later in the course, but right now, it's just a simple calculation. My output divided by my input. That's it. Several textbooks say I've become more competitive if I downsize, some call it retrenching. One company I work for called it right sizing. I don't think so. That may be one of those Clausewitzian's abstract concrete thing. Because my experience has been when the Army drew down from 780,000 active duty to 470,000 active duty in the early 90s, we didn't become more productive. I worked with one company as a consultant who had two sets of right sizing while I worked for them. They didn't become more productive. Some really good folks left before they started right sizing, jumped ship to get the good jobs at the other companies before the right sizing took place. A lot of folks spend more time working on their resumes and talking to HR than doing their jobs. They did not become more productive. I don't think you become more productive at least in the short run, when you expand. Because in the short run, my experience has been we take the best workers, they train the new workers. So at least in the short run, my productivity goes down. It may go up in the future. At least in the short run, it goes down. When I think about competition between companies, between industries, if we're the same size, relatively the same size, I got to find ways to be more competitive. Ways to get you in my door. If we have the same products, I got to find ways to be more competitive. Think about the fast food industry. Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell. They all serve basically the same thing. Some kind of meat, some kind of veggie, inside some kind of starch. Now, tacos, this thing outside the bun, they've got a tortilla, but it's still a starch. That's how the Happy Meal came about. McDonald's trying to be more competitive, put together the Happy Meal, get more people to stop there and stop at their competitors. That's how the dollar meal menu came about, the value menu. Trying to get people into their stores. Most of this course is going to look at manufacturing, the production side of the house, products. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about services as well. Services are intangible. I cannot hold that service in my hand. Well, but Joe, in the food service industry, a service industry? Yes, it is. In the food service industry, the service they provide for me is they buy the food, they prep the food, they bring the food to my table, and they clean up the dishes. I can hope they produce a product from that service. That burger or that meal that I go to, that I eat, is a product of the service. The service itself is intangible. I can't hold that food prep in my hands. I can't hold the buying of the food in my hands. It's intangible. It's like the plumber. I had an uncle and I got some cousins that were plumbers, so I'll pick on them. The plumber comes to your house. Last week came to my house, said $75 to fix your clogged drain. Okay, fix it. Small price to pay, because if the drain's clogged, can't wash dishes, you can't run water, can't run the dishwasher. Mama's not happy. I'm a firm believer. Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Fix the clogged drain. Comes in, $75. Okay, fix it. Just fix it. I don't care. Fix it. He pulls out a crooked looking hex wrench. He goes over to my drain. He goes under the drain. He puts it under the disposal. He cranks this thing around a few times, turns on the water, turns on disposal. Shh. Fixed. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. That's $150 a minute. Man, that's like $7,500 an hour. That's some pretty good money. The value of the service diminishes rapidly after the service is rendered. Once that drain was empty, the value diminished rapidly. That's why he told me up front how much it was going to cost. Because he knew if he waited after he did 30 seconds worth of work and said $75, I'd go, whoa, stop, time out. Some righteous bucks. I call it the plumber's principle. The value of a service diminishes rapidly after the service is rendered. That's why you go to a restaurant to tell you the price of the food before you buy it. Not so you can buy the most expensive thing or the cheapest thing, something in between. Because they know when they come out, and that little piece of meat is about 4 bites for a steak that was $40. You knew that when you ordered it. The value of the service diminishes rapidly. Because services are labor intensive, it's a little more difficult to inventory the service or to forecast the service. Talk about inventory and forecasting in a few days. You talk about strategy and decision-making in business. And this is probably going to be the longest video of the course. And I apologize, but I want to get this one out of the way, get this theoretical foundation out of the way so we can get on to other stuff. Take your time. We got 2 days set aside for this. Take both days. Watch part of it, then watch that part of it. And take a break right now. Great place to take a break. You talk about strategy, though, and decision-making in business. There are strategic decisions, long range, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. There's tactical decisions. What do I need to make this week, this month, this quarter? And there's operational decisions. What do I need to make the rest of the year? I need to think about the direction of the company. Where do I want to be in the future? What kind of products do I want in the future? What kind of customers? What kind of locations do I want in the future? Because product design doesn't usually happen overnight. Building a new facility. We'll talk about location design here in a few weeks. Like I said, it's all kind of ties together. This sets the foundation for the rest of the semester. We'll look at location analysis and location layout. Where do we put the location in? Where do we put the building in? Buildings don't pop up overnight. I got to buy the land. I got to buy the materials. I got to build the building. I got to design the building. New employees don't pop up overnight. I got to recruit them. I got to hire them. I got to train them. Capacity. Where do I put the capacity? When do I need the capacity? Where do I need the capacity? What kind of technology do I need? All those are strategic decisions out in the future. Wall Street looks at how I do decision making and how my operations relate to my decision making. They look at income per employee. How much money are we making per employee? How much money are we making per square foot in an operation? Good question. Like if you look at inventory, if you look at income per square foot or profit per square foot, if you look at Dollar General store, they have more income per square foot, more sales per square foot than does Walmart. Obviously, Walmart's much bigger. If you're in a Dollar General store, you know they just like jam stuff in the store all over the place. I got a slide in the slide deck called Strategy and the Internet. And I keep hoping that somewhere down the way, I can quit using the slide, but I haven't got there yet because people still have problems with this. I have to create a distinctive business strategy of how I'm going to use my brick and mortar and my internet together. Walmart keeps changing it. Obviously, they found the right thing because their sales went up in the first quarter of this year by 74%. Part of that's because of pandemic buying, part of it because they got the strategy right. From the flip side now, Amazon's still trying to figure out how to make Whole Foods work, brick and mortar, from the traditional online strategies. I've got to provide a unique experience to you, the customer. That's why Amazon says people who bought this also bought this. Well, if you don't go to Amazon for a while, oh, they're great. They'll come and say, oh, Joe, since last time you were here, your favorite author has written this book, or authors you've read in the past have written a new book, or these new products have come out that relate to what you shopped at in the past. When I think about strategy, I want to introduce a guy named Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu spoke and wrote about 512 BC. He wrote a book called The Art of War. Now, the beauty of The Art of War, which is required reading in most Asian business schools, it's a short book. It's like 14, 15 chapters. None of the chapters are more than 4 or 5 pages long. So it's a quick read. And you can get a free copy if you want to go to sonshi.com, sonshi.com. You can download a free copy of Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu wrote in such a way that you can change a word or two and have a whole new meaning for a whole new industry. So we're going to take Sun Tzu several times out the semester and change what he said a little bit to apply to operations supply chain. Sun Tzu said, one who is confused in his purpose cannot respond to his enemy. We're going to take out the word enemy, put in customer. Now, please don't think that Joe's saying that the customer is the enemy. I ain't saying that, guys. What I am saying is, by taking out the word enemy, putting in customer, we have a whole new meaning here. One who is confused in purpose cannot respond to his or her customer. If I can't respond to the customer, somebody else will. And if somebody else does, my customer goes somewhere else. To know this purpose as an employee, I have to have a clearly stated mission, a clearly stated vision, a clearly stated strategy. The mission is what we do. The mission of the University of Kansas is to educate future leaders. That's what we do. That's our mission. Pretty straightforward. The vision is where senior leadership sees me in the future, sees the organization in the future. And the strategy is how I'm going to do the mission and the vision. The strategy is like the highway, the bridge between now and the future. The vision only changes usually when the senior leadership changes. And the strategy may get tweaked, but it very rarely changes either. And the mission hardly ever changes unless I just completely change industries completely. So here's a good example of a good mission statement, I think. At the end of the Civil War, one of General Grant's aides was giving a press conference. And the press, like they are today, always wants to publish bad news because it sells better than good news. And General Grant finished like last in his class at West Point. But he went in the Army and was very successful in the Army. So successful, in fact, they made him the military governor of California, which I find interesting because last week they tore down his statue, and he's the reason we won the Civil War. He got out of the Army. He had a drinking issue. He got out of the Army, went back to his family. Civil War started. A lot of good officers left the U.S. Army, went to the Confederate Army. Back him now in the U.S. Army. They called him back to active duty. 1863, he got made the commander of all of the Army. One of President Lincoln's aides said, "Sir, you know I got drinks." Can't remember the exact quote, but pretty much what President Lincoln said about him was, "I know. Find out what he drinks and get a case for all my officers because he wins. And in fact, General Grant is the reason we are the United States of America today, because he was such a great battlefield commander, probably the greatest commander we've had in the history of the country. Not the greatest president, but the greatest commander. And he's the reason that we are the United States of America today, because he is the reason we won the Civil War. So at the end of the war, one of the folks in the press asked his aide, so how did he go from being a failure in business and being a drunk to being the greatest battlefield commander we've ever had? And I think the response from his aide gives us the foundation of a mission and a vision and a strategy. He made sure that everybody who worked for him knew exactly what he wanted, when he wanted it, and why he wanted it done. Now think about that. If every boss you ever had told you exactly what to do, when to do it, and why you're doing it, or if every professor told you exactly what they expected, when they expected it, and why you were doing it, how much easier would life be? So when we start doing strategy formulation, the first thing I do is define my primary task, define my mission. What is it we do? Once I've got that defined, now I need to assess my core competencies. A core competency is that thing or things that my company does better than anybody else's that gives us a distinct competitive advantage. Sometimes may not be readily apparent. In fact, one of the major snack food baking companies about 15 years ago realized that their core competency was not baking, it was marketing. So they outsourced the baking to somebody else and focus on the marketing. So I got to figure out what my core competencies are. Now, one of the ways I can do this is what's called a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization. Now, having conducted several of these as a participant and as a consultant, I got to tell you, people love to hear what their strengths are. But people get really, really upset when you start identifying weaknesses. Oh, no, we do that well. No, here's the feedback. Here's the benchmarking. You don't do that so well. Some of these things get very, very ugly at the corporate level. Opportunities and threats are outside the organization. I can't control them, but I can take advantage of them. So this brings us to our first homework assignment. Your first homework assignment is a personal SWOT analysis. You're going to look at yourself. You identify at least 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, 3 opportunities, and 3 threats. So going back to General Grant's what, why, when. The due date is on the syllabus. It's due by midnight on the date on the syllabus. What? We're doing a personal SWOT analysis. You're looking at yourself and doing a SWOT analysis on yourself. The why is twofold. 1, this will give you a feel for the SWOT analysis and the methodology. 2, I think this is the most important of the 2. This is going to prep you for career fairs and interviews in the fall. Whether you're looking for an internship or you're looking for a full-time job, it's going to prep you. Because somewhere in every interview process that I've been involved in as an interviewer or an interviewee, somebody on the panel or the interviewer asked the question, what are your strengths? What do you bring to the table? Go to a career fair. If we have the career fair this fall, it's going to be like speed dating on steroids. A couple hundred companies in the ballroom. You're going to go through, you're going to press the flesh, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to give them your resume. You got like 15 seconds to make an impact, make an impression. They're going to ask you, what do you offer the company? That's your strengths. So I want you to identify at least 3. And somewhere in every interview process, somebody asks the question, what are your weaknesses? I understand the strengths piece. I think the weaknesses piece is they want to know, what do you want to work on? What can we help you improve when we hire you? So you're going to identify 3 weaknesses, 3 personal weaknesses. You're going to identify 3 opportunities that you take advantage of, and 3 personal threats. This is an all or nothing assignment. There's no format. You can put it in bullets, sentences, paragraphs. Some folks have gone online and found a SWOT format and put it into like a little quad. I don't care. This is your tool. Keep it current. Every time you identify a weakness, put it down there. Time you move a weakness to a strength, update it. Keep it current. So whenever you go through a job interview, people say, "What do you have to offer?" You're ready. You're ready for their answers, their questions, and you make an impact on them. Let me give you some examples, and you can use these so it may reduce the number you got to think of. 1, if you're multilingual, and look into the picture roster and for the class, we've got a lot of international students in the course. Y'all are multilingual. That's a strength. If you're not multilingual, it's a weakness. Here's what I know. When I lived in Germany, I was trying to learn German, so I could communicate with the folks at the gym. They wanted to learn English and practice their English. So here's the conversation. I'd speak German with a Southern accent. They respond back in English with a German accent. So if you were an outsider, you think this is the goofiest conversation I've ever seen. Well, my German friends used to tell me, "Joe, you know what? If you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. You speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. You speak 1 language, you're probably American." Whoa, that hit hard. I thought it was an insult, and then I started laughing because I realized it was true. Because we as Americans expect everybody to speak our language. And if we don't speak our language, what do? We just talk louder and slower, and they'll understand us. I had the same experience down in Panama back in January. Bubba said something. I didn't understand him, but he spoke so fast. Apparently, it was obvious from the expression on my face. I didn't understand him. So he spoke his Spanish slower and louder. Dude, if I don't understand the words you're saying them slower ain't going to help me. Unless you're independently wealthy, one of the threats for every college student is finances. So please, give us some thought. 3 personal strengths, 3 personal weaknesses, 3 opportunities, 3 threats. Your tool, keep it current. So the what? A personal SWOT analysis. The when? By midnight on the date on the syllabus. The why? Gives you a feel for the SWOT format. At the same time, it gives you a tool to use to make you ready for the interview process when that time comes. Keep it current, your tool. There's also what's called a steeple analysis. Steeple really looks at, if you look at the slide in the slide deck that shows steeple, it's like SWOT, it's an acronym. It looks at the external environment. It's a way of assessing the external environment, a little more detailed than just the opportunities and threats from the SWOT analysis. We start doing the strategy formulation, and we've identified our mission, we've identified our core competencies, we've done our SWOT analysis. Now I've got to determine the order qualifiers, order winners for my products. And there's a different order qualifier and a different order winner for every product that I've got. The order qualifier gets you to consider the product, gets you to my website, gets you in the door of my store. The order winner will get you to buy the product. So the qualifier gets you in the game. The winner gets you the sale. Now I can start positioning the firm. And there's several ways I can position the firm. There's really 4 traditional ways of doing it, plus some newer ways of doing it, I think. First one is competing on cost. If I want to compete on cost, I've got to get rid of all the waste. Remember we said if it doesn't add value, it's waste. So I got to walk the process, figure out what's non-value added, and get rid of it. I got to spend some money. Wait a minute, stop, Joe, stop. When we compete on cost, we only spend money. Absolutely. I have to spend money on equipment, and training. I've got to have the latest, greatest equipment. I've got to have the best training possible if I want to compete on cost. If I don't train you right, you're not going to make a quality product. I got to redo it. It takes away my ability to compete on cost. Best example I can find competing on cost is Southwest. Southwest flies one type of plane, the 737. Now, they got several variants of the 737, but they're all 737s. Every pilot can fly every plane. Every flight attendant knows where all of the safety features are on every plane. Every mechanic can work on every plane. I've got one set of repair parts. I've got one set of records. Compare that to United. Last time I flew United, I looked at their little in-flight magazine. They've got like 14 different airframes in their fleet. That's 14 sets of pilots, 14 sets of attendants, 14 sets of mechanics, 14 sets of repair parts, 14 sets of records. That's why Southwest can usually undercut. I want to compete on quality. The first thing I've got to do is determine, how do my customers define quality? Obviously, somebody who shops all the time at Nordstrom's has a different definition of quality than people who shop at Walmart. Neither one of them are wrong, just different definitions. People who shop at Nordstrom's have different definitions of quality than folks who shop at the Dollar Tree. Some folks shop at both because they want to save money. I have to understand how my customers define quality. Best example of that is Ritz-Carlton. Depending on where you're at in the Ritz-Carlton chain of the management, you can spend up to $2,000 to make that guest stay a quality stay. Because they know if you're going to spend that kind of money, they want you to spend it at their hotel. They've been known to call chefs back in to cook you dinner if you got there late. They go out and buy you dinner and bring it to you. They keep a database so they know what your preferences are, so they can make sure they take care of you when you come in. I want to compete on flexibility. I need a wide variety of products or the ability to quickly modify my current products to meet your needs. Best example is Rubbermaid. Rubbermaid has a goal of 300 new products a month coming out of R&D. We may never see all those products, but their goal is whatever it is you want, they want to make sure they've got it before the competition does. I want to compete on speed. What I really need to have is world-class communications and world-class transportation. FedEx, UPS, probably the best examples of that. Both of them try to clear customs in the air. Both of them have a set window where they modify, where they bring the planes in, offload them, reload them, get them in the air. Both of them track the planes. They know where it's at. One of the things I found interesting with FedEx when I spent time with them was they have two planes every night on each coast. One on each coast. One leaves Portland, Maine, flies down the East Coast at the Panhandle of Florida, starts angling up toward Memphis, Tennessee. Their hub. The other one leaves Seattle, Tacoma, flies down the West Coast, and then Southern California starts angling back toward Memphis. Every night, these two planes fly empty. From an adding value perspective, originally I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It costs money to fly planes. But their thought process is, you've paid good money to have the world on time, wherever you find it. Next day morning, next day afternoon, second day, FedEx ground, UPS, whatever. By having these two planes flying empty, if any plane has a precautionary landing or can't take off for whatever reason, mechanical reason, they can have an empty plane there, cross-dock it, transload from one plane to the next, get into Memphis, still meet that 4-hour window for offloading, and get the product and the package out to you to meet your deadlines. I think we've got past that point of just looking at these 4 traditional ways of positioning. I think I call it the hybrid positioning. You can compete on more than one of those 4 historical ways. Think about Amazon and Walmart. They are trying to compete on flexibility, a wide variety of products, cost, they're trying to undercut each other and give you the lowest cost, and speed. How quick can I get it to you? That's why Walmart's got buy online, pick up in the store, or free 2-day delivery. So Amazon's got Amazon Prime. So they're trying to compete on more than one area. I don't think you can accuse either one, Walmart or Amazon, of competing on quality. In fact, several studies have shown there's some huge issues with Amazon and quality and fraudulent products. I'll talk about that a little more later in the course. But they are trying to compete on flexibility, cost, and speed. And there's the idea of competing on customer service, which hopefully will make a resurgence here now because several companies have demonstrated they don't really care about the customer as much as they claim they do. I had several companies here in Lawrence that during the pandemic showed that they didn't really care. Called in trying to keep some of the restaurants open, called in an order, and the company's like, you know what? We don't open for another 9 minutes. Can you call back in 9 minutes? We'll take your order then. Can't you take it now and just start at 9 minutes? No, we can't do that. Call back. Haven't been back since. Another company said, is it the drive-through? And they're like, we're sorry, but we close at 4 today. It's 2 minutes to 4. We can't take care of you. You have to come back another time. Haven't been back. So if I want to compete on customer service, I may not have the best product, best quality. I may not have the cheapest product, or the most expensive product. I may not have the ability to get you the product the quickest, but my service after the sale exceeds anybody else's. I gotta be honest. I'd rather wait an extra day, pay $1 or $2 more, and get a product that's quality that you're going to stand behind and take care of it doesn't work, than to get that product that's the quickest or the cheapest. Another way of looking at the organization is called the Balanced Scorecard. The Balanced Scorecard basically gives you a 360-degree view of your organization. The concept came out about 20 years ago now in an article in the Harvard Business Review. And it's been republished several times as a Harvard Business Review classic, which means I don't have enough articles to fill up the magazine, so I'm going to bring an old one up forward and print it again, call it a classic. But it's a good concept. Again, it kind of proposed that 360-degree view well before these things were 360-degree analysis were popular. It looks at things from 4 perspectives: from the finance, from the customer perspective, from the process perspective, and from learning and growing perspective. My concern with most textbooks is they ask the questions in the wrong way. If you don't ask the question the right way, you might not get the right answer. From a finance perspective, most books say the question is, how should we look to the shareholders? Well, I know how I should look. My stock should be going up. If I've got a dividend, it should be going up on a regular basis, and I should be paying on a regular basis. The question is, how do I look to the shareholders? Are people buying my stock? Are the institutional investors buying my stock? Are the stockbrokers recommending my stock? Or are people shorting my stock because they think I'm going the wrong direction? Are they selling it as quick as they can? So I want to know, how do I look to the shareholders? The second question, from the customer perspective, most textbooks say I should ask the question, how should I look to the customer? Well, based upon my positioning strategy, I know how I should look. I think the real question should be, how do I look to the customer? Are they buying my product? Are they coming to my store and buying my product? Or have we created what Best Buy discovered several years ago, and we've created this new term, showrooming? What Best Buy discovered was people are coming to their stores, they're playing with their products, they're standing right there in the store with their phone, and they're going, oh, look, big screen TV. I can get it cheaper here. And they're buying the same product online in the store. So Best Buy became the showroom for everybody else. That's why they went with their price match guarantee. If you came in the store, they will make sure you bought their product. Even if it meant on some products losing money, they don't want to lose the customer. So how do I look to the customer? Which processes do I excel at as opposed to which ones should I excel at? I know what I should do well. The question for my SWOT analysis is, which one am I doing well? Which ones do I need to move from weaknesses to strengths? And the last one's the only one I think is really asked in the right way in most textbooks. What do I need to do to be a learning, growing organization? You go to work for Disney. First thing you do is you go to Disney University. You learn the history, traditions, customs of Disney, what you can and can't do to make a guest stay a quality stay. Then you start learning your job. And if you go to a new job at Disney, you go back to Disney University to learn more. What do we need to do to be a learning, growing organization? I was in the Army. I went to a basic logistics course, then I went to an advanced logistics course, then I went to an intermediate level education course, then I went to the War College. So every 4 or 5 years, I went back to another school to learn something new or to improve upon the skills I already had. What do we need to do to sustain our ability to be a learning, growing organization? If I answer those 4 questions right, I ask them right, answer them right, I get a 360-degree view of my organization, and I know where I can improve things. It works very well with the SWOT analysis. Take a look at the reading, kind of scan through the reading. It doesn't cost you anything, it's free. Do your SWOT analysis. Be brutally honest with yourself. What 3 strengths do you have that you offer to the organization? What 3 weaknesses do you have that you really want to improve upon? What 3 opportunities are there? Jobs, internships, scholarships, whatever, maybe a new major. What 3 threats are keeping you from accomplishing your goals? Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Stay positive. Stay social. I know we have this social distancing thing. Stay 2 meters apart. Wear the mask when you're outside. I don't like the term social distancing. I like the term physical distancing. You need to remain social. Check on those folks that are important to you. See how they're doing. Check on your classmates that you haven't seen since, maybe some of them since before spring break. See how they're doing. Check on your family. If you're not at home, check on your family. See how they're doing. Your cousins. See how everybody's holding up. Because here's what studies are starting to show: a huge increase in mental illnesses because of our social distancing. So remain social. Remain physically distant, remain social. Reach out to folks. Stay healthy. Stay focused. I know there's a lot of issues going on in our country right now, but every time we've gone through one of these issues like this in the past, we've come out as a stronger, more united country. We need to focus on what unites us. We have more in common than we have different. We need to focus on what's common to us all. And we'll come out of this crisis a much better, a much stronger, a much more united country. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.